that's flying under the radar in general with all these offensive players. I think we're still looking at a lot of these offensive players and like the mistakes maybe they've made or they haven't made under the same lens of they haven't had the offensive coaches. I think we do need to give them, I'm speaking for myself. I think I need to give them a little bit of grace when it comes to the fact that they're seeing guys they want to develop here.
Welcome back to episode 19 of Out of Tahn Yinzers. I'm Joe alongside Justin. We're here talking Pittsburgh sports. So Steelers, Pirates, Pens, and a little college football playoff Pitt implications to wrap the show. But we're still in draft season. We're wrapping up kind of what draft season as we get into minicamp. We're in the rookie minicamp right now. So we see a lot of funky videos out there where people are either saying whatever they were thinking on draft day is coming true now, or one way or the other on that side of the coin. But today we're going to be going through kind of each pick, giving a little bit of our take, a little bit more so than we had before. So just kind of going right down the line on each one and just kind of seeing how they feel in shorts. But Justin, I don't know if you want to do a little summary before we hop right in.
Yeah, so like we had talked about, we went into these, but it was more running through them, grading them. At this point, just wanted to dive a little bit deeper, give our general thoughts. Not even necessarily like we were really grading them a few weeks ago. This is more just kind of general thoughts, and we certainly touched on a couple of these guys, especially some of the earlier guys, even before the draft, and gave our thoughts. But just to run through them real quick, or just to dive in, I should say. So just the first one, Max Ahanajar. I know this was your, like we had talked about, this was my guy before. I really, again, like we had talked about, certainly has the upside. And things I like about him, certainly has the feet of a soccer player. You can tell he played soccer, basketball growing up. He's raw, but again, those are things that I'm sure the Steelers staff really liked. Seeing him move, seeing him play against high-end talent at Texas Tech. I had him, like we had talked about before the draft, I had him in the same tier as Lamu, who went to the Patriots 7 picks later. That's where, when if you had people that, I think it was a lot of people were tied into that, what happened with that pick. But you got to look at, now that we're a little bit removed from that, you almost have to look at that pick on its own. There's certainly some upside there. And you can certainly see it. Again, maybe the value wasn't anyone's favorite, but you certainly see the upside. How a lot of these, it's really, you can see how they could go one direction or the other. And this will be a theme throughout the draft here, but, taking big swings like we talked about, he has the upside that maybe even some of the tackles that went ahead of him don't have. So I think I gave it a B-. I think you gave it somewhere around the same, in terms of grade. But again, I don't think any of us had any issues with the pick. I think we all liked the pick a little bit better, seeing what happened throughout the rest of the draft, especially in the second round.
Yeah, he's someone you can dream on. I kind of wrote down young, high upside, obviously kind of early in his career when it comes to just playing football in general. But he has the absolute body type that you'd expect of for a tackle. He's athletic enough that you'd expect as a tackle. And he's already put a lot of good things on tape. He may not have played football very long, but he had a lot of starts at Arizona State the last 2 years. So even so, it's something that this season, I think he's going to be walking right in there as the right tackle. That's where they have him kind of today and kind of that rookie mini camp. I think Faltanu is going to be moving over to the left tackle. So I think if it's not early in the season, it'll be by midseason for sure. But Ahanajar is going to be on the field this season. And I think it's one of those where the arrow should be up, similar to kind of how you would think about a Broderick Jones when he was on board. But maybe even with the way the body type is, he doesn't have to spend that time in the weight room the first 2 years to kind of get where he needs to go. He's already there from that perspective. So he's just got to learn the nuts and bolts. And he also has the nice positive of a much better offensive line coach than Broderick did when he came in the door.
I feel like that's flying under the radar in general with all these offensive players. I think we're still a little bit, and I was thinking about this today, I think we're still looking at a lot of these offensive players and like the mistakes maybe they've made or they haven't made under the same lens of they haven't had the offensive coaches, since Munchak. I think we had talked about this before, but look at the development, look how they developed offensive linemen under Munchak and look what they've done since then. Yeah. So I think we do need to give them, I'm speaking for myself, I think I need to give them a little bit of grace when it comes to the fact that they're seeing guys they want to develop here. And he's the perfect example of I don't want to say low floor, but he's the perfect example of a high ceiling, raw, has the measurables. And those are things you need at tackle. Tackle's a position where people live and die by arm length. And, ability to move and those raw traits that you can kind of coach. And again, that's the upside of having, hopefully, the upside of having this offensive coaching staff now.
It's one of those players too that if he hits, you now really do have your line for the next,
Hmm.
5 to 7 years and locked in. Like, don't have, we were just complaining about it, over investing in an offensive line. You shouldn't have to really invest in the offensive line if a Hanachor hits, because that really fills out the rest of the gap. And you're really kind of just missing that guard. It could be Dunker, it could be someone else, but you're just kind of plug and playing a guard around the other four that are already locked in now if Hanachor is one of those.
Yeah, and we'll touch on this in a second, but it's the nice thing too is you can always, like, the Ravens are good at this. They'll draft for depth, and the Eagles do this as well. But if you can set those tackle positions up, you can find the guards later in the draft that are even impact guards later in the draft. You don't have to spend the high picks on the tackle. So hopefully we're at that point. Like you've pointed out many times, 3 or 4 picks on the tackle. So moving along to the second round. I think it's pretty obvious my thoughts on this one. I didn't even really go into the last one because I talked about him so much before the draft. But like I said before, I liked him. And my thoughts on him before that weren't even. I think some people maybe assumed that my thoughts on Jeremy Bernard were my thoughts on Jeremy Bernard were just in general. I wasn't even so much thinking of, hey, he'd be a perfect fit with the Steeler. He happens to be a great fit with their current receivers room. But I liked him just in general. I thought he was a great value about where he would go. We happened to, I even said, hey, they're going to move up, somewhere around 10 picks. They moved up 6 picks, got him. Wasn't so much a take on the Steelers draft. I just like the player in general. But I do think he happens on top of that. The bonus is he happens to be a great fit with their current receiver room. And talk about it. We talked about this before, but talk about a night and day when you go from their receivers, wide receiver 2 through 4, in their receiver room to what it is now. I think it's one of the bigger improvements in the NFL.
Wow, that's pretty low bar. So, you got to be pretty
Mhm,
terrible to have that big of an improvement. And the Steelers were
mhm.
as bad as you could get. You literally had Calvin Austin as your wide receiver 2 last year, and he's not even going to see the field with the Giants, I would think, when it comes to that team. So for Jeremy Bernard, though, he's someone that doesn't have the upside as some other receivers when it comes to being a prospect, but he does have more of the measurables than you'd expect. We talked about that. He has the size. He can run with the ball after the catch. He's someone who's been able to run the routes you'd expect. He's getting separation that you would hope for in college. It's not all contested catch. So there's a lot of positives there. And I think we talked a few episodes ago of just kind of building your basketball team as a wide receiver room. So a basketball team, in essence, you have a center, you have a point guard, you have someone who can shoot on the outside. I think the Steelers are trying to build that in a much better fashion than before, though with a lean towards being big. So it's kind of with you're doubling down on the basketball theme to be tall and be big. You got DK, you got Pittman, you got Jeremy Bernard. They should all be able to block. So if you got 3 wide receivers on the field and you're only kind of running a one tight end set, 3 wide receivers, you can still run the ball out of that formation pretty well as too. So I think he's someone that's going to be excited. I think Steeler fans are going to be a fan of him. My only question before we move on to the third round, Justin, is where do you take Jeremy Bernard in a dynasty fantasy football draft right now? Does he sneak into the
I
first round?
definitely
Because he's a Steeler, he's not anywhere near the first round. He's more of a third, late second, early third.
I think you probably don't have any choice because of how, if you really look at, and we don't need to get into dynasty fantasy football right now, but my brother was just in a draft and he read some of the names, and I think like some of the guys that snuck into the first round, it really puts into perspective like this draft and how it can just be especially and the receiver position a lot of people thought was a strength, but yeah, he has to be in the first round. Just when you look at there's just the quarterback depth isn't there, the running back depth isn't there. Some of the names that he was saying that went in the first is kind of puts it into perspective, the lack of depth in this draft in general, or I should say even upside. So yeah, I would say yes, he's definitely I think he will be a better actual player than he will be a fantasy player. But yeah, unfortunately for maybe anyone who needs a high end talent this year in fantasy, yeah, he probably is a first round pick. He is a first round pick.
And you kind of got to where I was thinking as well, where I was trying to put you there without putting our fellow fantasy football teammates on the spot to see how you're going to draft, would be there was really a pretty big drop off after Bernard as well when it came to wide
Hmm.
receiver in that position. So for the Steelers to not make the same mistake in the second round that they did in the first with letting Lemon slip away, was key. I feel like if you would have walked away without a wide receiver in round 2, you probably would not have been able to get a wide receiver that would have been reasonably expected to get on the field this season.
No, and this isn't like we're, because I think a lot of people sometimes they'll come up with a take like that to try to justify if they're like, hey, I want to be optimistic about this year. We said this before. We had a tier basically after the 7 tackles. I'm sorry, and I said this to a commenter this week. There was definitely a drop after the 7th tackle. Now you could argue 6'7" Lamu and Hanachor. There was a big drop at tackle, and there might not have been as big of a drop at receiver. But now looking back, those first and second round picks do look pretty solid because you were not getting the tackle that you got in the receiver position. Like you weren't getting a Jeremy Bernard at tackle in the second round. So it actually wasn't the worst thing the way it worked out for them. I think they got a little lucky. I like that they moved up. I thought it was a really smart move, especially, one or two of the teams they moved up ahead of. It worked out probably better than they maybe deserved with the way it worked out in the first round.
Yeah, no, I would agree with that. Just I'm still a little sour on Lemon. I would have liked to see him in black and gold and have that high end wide
Yeah.
receiver. But Hanachor
I
was
want to know
a good
because
consolation prize.
I just wanted to look smart. I picked them last second. I pivoted. Oh, they're going to trade up for 11. I'm like, they could do it. They could do it. It's right there. And they didn't do it, of course. But they got my guy in the second round. So it all evened out.
For sure. And let's move on to the next pick where I was getting slammed after the last episode. So let me give a little parlay of why I was talking about Drew Aller as high as he was as a maybe a pick. And it really was just about, I wanted the Steelers to take a quarterback with one of their third round picks, probably their first of the 3, on a quarterback that had upside. And Aller was that. So I think he's still that. And, the chances of him hitting, we talked about last week as well, are minuscule. But the Steelers need every chance, every lottery ticket that you can buy. They need to stop at the 7-Eleven to and from practice to find quarterbacks if they need to. And Drew Aller is one where you're kind of buying that $20 lottery ticket as opposed to kind of that $2 scratch off that would be in the 7th round. So I'm still a fan of Aller. Would I bet on him to succeed? No, but I'm excited to see him in the preseason. I think he has the traits as well. So this isn't me backing off of it being a high draft grade. It's just saying, hey, like the expectations and kind of the being a success in the 3rd round is just kind of having that chance. If he actually hits, he's not only the best 3rd round pick, he would be one of the best picks in the whole draft. So it's a boomer bust type of pick. And I think they needed to make that.
Right. And we've certainly hit on it. A little inside baseball for anyone listening. If you have an opinion on a quarterback, you're going to get bashed online. That's just that's what I've learned very quickly. Me and Joe could be completely opposite sides on the same player, and we're both going to get bashed if it's a quarterback. People just it's like, I was talking to a couple of people this week. It's like a goalie and a coach in hockey, or a coach in any sport. No one really knows. Half the people really don't even know what they're talking about when they have an opinion, but everyone has one. So you're going to hear about it either way.
There are people questioning our age and whether or not that makes us a good.
Yeah.
I don't know if that means that I have a really gray beard, that they think I'm old or they think I'm young. I'm not sure how to take the age comment.
I don't know. We'll get into that. That's a discussion for another time, but that one was pretty funny. I do have, and I'm going to take the other side of this. There's just so much context I think needs. People just aren't getting that. Obviously, it's people watching shorts, which there's only so much context you can get. But I do want to. This is a major pet peeve I have. This isn't new to anyone that follows this stuff. I texted you about it this week. We're just in peak. Just you kind of got to walk away from social media sometimes. Season, especially Twitter, X now. I won't say the person that he's known to be like an aggregator. No one really knows if he's a real person or not. He just says, wild takes just to say them. I've said my, thoughts on Aller. We don't really know at this point on most of these guys, especially quarterbacks. I'm excited to see an offensive minded coach and see what he can develop in general. You're going to give anyone a chance, obviously. But then you get on Twitter and then you see 1 4-second clip of a drop back drill that I have personally done in my life. And you see these people having these extreme opinions on, oh my God, is this the worst footwork I've ever seen? And it's like, this is just crazy. This is just crazy season right now with some of these takes. Like, you're going to tell, and I actually have, I'm not 4-second clip. It would be stupid to have any single opinion. I'm not even going to share them right now. Like oh, okay, well, I wonder why they're doing this, or just like reasonable thoughts on the clip. But these people saying like, and they're not even the what is being shared, but these people saying, "Oh my God, this footwork is terrible." Like, you don't even know what you're talking about. You don't even know what was said to him 2 seconds before the drill. And then as soon as I'm thinking that, and then Ben DiNucci comes on, who played under the current coach, and says, "Yeah, this is how they do that drill." It could have been anyone, and they're gonna have you day one. Look at the offensive line, what they're doing. They're all doing all footwork drills as well. Quarterback's a little bit more relevant because it's a footwork driven position. But Ben DiNucci says, yeah, that's how he shows you clips of Aaron Rodgers doing the drill half speed. They're over exaggerating their drop step and then their gather steps. And it's just like these people had these crazy, oh my God, what a terrible pick. I told you so. From 4 seconds from one drill. Like, this is just, it's like I said to you last year, everyone was ready to write off CMC because he was going half speed on a walkthrough drill. Like, this is a 4-second clip of a 2-hour practice of day one, getting to know you practice without pads. Like, what are we doing?
No, absolutely. And it's going to be a very much watch practice video type
Mm-hmm.
time until week 1, especially if Mr. Rogers actually signs and comes back to the neighborhood.
And to be and it is funny, yeah. Like I said, there's actually some questions. Like I was just wondering. Like it was interesting to learn from that. My thought was, oh, I wonder if McCarthy teaches like a false drop stack or something like that. Those are the real questions. Kurt Warner came on, was saying, he was talking about how like he's learned things, even after his career. Hall of Famer coming on saying, based on the way he pushes off his front foot. Like, those are the real conversations, not these, oh my God, this guy's good or this guy's bad because of 4 seconds from a practice clip. So people are going to have it's just quarterback position. It just brings out the crazy takes on everybody. It's wild. I had to say something because it was just driving me crazy all week. And it's, obviously I share my opinions on Aller, but like, we don't know. Like, we're going to learn. If you're taking anything for 4 seconds of practice, like, there's film to watch. There's good, there's bad from the player. Just don't even share the opinion if that's what you're going to say from a walkthrough day one on a nothing drill.
Yeah, 100%. So I think the one pick we skimmed over last time, barely even talked about it, was Dalen Everett, the cornerback out of Georgia. How are you feeling with a little bit more time to digest on that one?
I still, again, it's somewhat this is another, I think this, when you really dig into this draft, I'm seeing them taking a lot of upside swings. This is one that I was a little bit more, okay, that's a little confusing about, if that makes a little bit confused about. This is very clearly, people might say, oh, I wanted this corner, I wanted that corner. They're clearly like, we're going to take the best outside corner on our board, and we're going to take a guy that can run. I think he ran a 4.38 or something like that, and he has this is clearly size speed combo. We're going to bet on ourselves to be able to get. Honestly, Aller's the same way. It's raw traits. Hanachor, like, there's a pattern here. If you really like take a step back and look at it, it might not have been our pick. We didn't grade it super high. But it's a bet. The coaching staff in the front office betting on, hey, let's bet on ourselves, the people we have in the front office. He did. I told you this 2 weeks ago. We did. I was thinking back to myself, like, have I seen a ton of film on him? There is film on him that we have seen. And it just happened to be a highlight of Jeremy Bernard where he's actually stiffing arming him to the ground. So there is technically some film on him from our, on our site. I had to watch it back to see it. Again, it's just very clearly a player. They're betting on the upside of the size and the speed and thinking, hey, we can coach, a starter out of him. And there's people that think they see starter in him, which you should in the 3rd round. But yeah, I think it's just clearly a raw. This is a bet on size and speed.
Yeah, and with the roster the way it is this year, he's someone that doesn't or shouldn't have to come in and
Have to
play
be
this
on.
year. But he's a
Right.
great depth piece. I wrote down, can this new Steelers staff actually draft corners? When's the last time the Steelers have been able to draft a corner? We talked about, hey, is it the same old Steelers when it comes to drafting? This is a whole new
Right.
staff. Patrick Graham, different defensive back coaches and things of that nature. So we'll see kind of how it goes with Dalen Everett. But, I feel like the way he can actually not be afraid to come up and play the run means that he might be able to get on the field in some of those, nickel situations and be a little closer to the line of scrimmage. So I think he'll definitely see snaps. It'll be up to him on how many snaps he sees as the season progresses.
It would be very hilarious, to your point, if, and we talked about this last week with Tomlin in general, but if this first staff comes in, takes a swing that we didn't expect, and they hit on a corner in round 3 in year 1, that would be pretty hilarious. Odds aren't, it's third round, late third round. Odds aren't great, but yeah, that would be really funny if they came in and hit on a outside corner like that.
And the next pick is someone I think is going to get the most kind of advertisement deals out of this whole draft when it comes to Pittsburgh. He's going to be splattering your TV if he can get onto the starting roster because he is a gem of a human with the red mullet. Jennings Dunker is someone that I think I put down as the best value pick of the draft. I think he's the one pick where he fell farther than he expected, and the Steelers kind of were able to pounce on him and be able to kick him inside the guard. And he's working left guard in rookie minicamp right now. So obviously he's going to be competing for that spot in training camp. And, we'll see what happens, but he's going to be a fun one to root for.
Yeah. I mean, I heard people saying before the draft, can you imagine if the Steelers take him? He'd be like the perfect Steelers guy. He'd sell so many jerseys. I think the Steelers almost got a disconnect. I think they got him where he should have gone just based on his straight play alone, not including the versatility. So it's almost like they got a discount. They got the versatility for free, which is becoming more and more expensive with guards. And we touched on it before, but one of the guys I follow, he's like, my favorite thing is taking guards in the third round because they're just, you can just get starters at position, a position like that we talked about before. It's all about the, positional value and things like that. But perfect example, even in a draft that people didn't love, of a guy where you can get a guard that can start from you, can reverse, he can play all over your offensive line, and you need that in today's NFL. The players are getting bigger than they ever were before, and it doesn't mean they're any less injury prone. So we were unanimous on this one. We love this pick. This is, I think this was our highest average grade for a pick. Value here was pretty obvious. I haven't seen anyone who didn't like this pick.
It's the value player combo. Absolutely. So, and especially someone that has, tackle depth that adds to their team, but will be able to start as a guard. So I think he's going to be a really, really fun person to root for as a Steeler. The next pick, though, I think was one that everyone was a head scratcher. Is it still as itchy up top a few weeks after the draft, Justin, for Caden Wetchen?
So yes and no. I'll tell you what, I had a guy tell me in the comments he was the next Debo Samuel. I was like, okay, we're just getting crazy
Wetchen
here. I
was?
don't
Or were they
know.
talking about Bernard?
No,
Wetchen?
they were talking. Yes, correct. That is the way you phrase that question is the correct question. No, he was. Yes, that's what he was saying. I said, do you realize he had 190 combined receiving yards in college? That would be one of the crazier. Just for him to be, this was my true response is apparently he did play really well. I think it was the Shrine Bowl, one of the like not
Yeah.
the Senior Bowl, but he
And the
played really
practice
well
footage of
in
that
the
was
Shrine Bowl.
really good.
Right,
And yeah.
right. So I think my take is uh, again, in order for them to take him here, I think they probably think, okay, we can get a little bit more. Again, this is us betting on them betting on the staff, and we can get a little bit more out of him. If he turns in, my comp is kind of like a Turpin from the Cowboys, Devontae Turpin. You can get a returner that can do some stuff for you and some gadget plays. If he turns into a gadget player, then yeah, I'm fine with this pick. He's going to make the roster. They were a bad return. This is one comment that was made a good point. He pointed out how bad they were in the return game. If you can give yourself one less, on average, one less, first down per field that you're flipping, that's valuable. I agree with that. I do agree with it. It's more of a question for us on what was there in the fourth round. There's always going to be players that slip through that day two that you like, so that's more where it comes from. They get something in the receiving game out of him, then by all means, I have no issues with the pick whatsoever. You just look at straight facts. A guy that had 190 receiving yards in college, those guys becoming more than best case scenario, a gadget player, almost unheard of. Like, we're not responding to the Debo Samuel comment, but just in general, becoming a useful receiver. Right? If you can get Devontae Turpin out of him, I mean, that's perfectly fine. I have no issues with the pick.
Yeah, I still struggle with the position and the value aspect. I think when you're drafting, value still matters, especially in the fourth round. You get past the fourth round, maybe you can kind of argue with me on some of those things. I mean, I feel like you could slide these guys down, take Rubio as an undrafted free agent. We haven't talked about him yet,
Right.
but we can kind of maybe just talk about these next three altogether. With Wetjen is one that, he's definitely going to have a role. He will be on the team this
Mm-hmm.
season. Maybe they beat the Seahawks last year if he's on the team last year. You never really
Right.
know. So, like, in some regards, like, he'll probably know the rules for if he's a special teams only guy. But I think for him to actually make a difference on offense is an uphill climb. I kind of like their 7th round pick better if you're going to have
Mhm.
him, be a receiver in the offense and be able to go out there and run
Right.
routes. But there's no doubt he's an athletic guy and he's going to have his place. He'll be able to get some snaps and if he makes something of it in the offense, you get a few more. But I think, like
Yeah,
you
and
said, they're going to kind of script him in more than anything.
right, and I don't know that people realize that they in a lot of ways, if they are to both play beyond the return game and special teams, Heidenreich and they would be in the same spot, essentially. Like, you're not holding both those guys into a receiving core, and Heidenreich is essentially he's more of a slot receiver than he is a running back. So I don't know if people really fully grasp that, and you're not holding both those guys onto a roster. So it'll be interesting to see what happens. Um, they could both play special teams. The special teams gets a little weird with certain things like that, so it's hard to really predict some of that. But to my take, really, why we graded it the way we did is, to me, that's more of like a finishing touch pick on a roster at that point of the draft than it is the way we would probably build this roster, where we felt like there's a lot of ways you can upgrade a lot of more, play, 20 snaps a game type of positions. I don't think we really have an issue. Like, he is a good kick returner. We're not arguing that. It's just a matter of, like, do you take a guy that probably, again, maybe he will surprise us and he'll be more, maybe he's even more than a gadget player. I can't really see that, but if he's a gadget player and he gives them, a lot in the return game, then it could be a fine pick, I think is what it comes down to.
Perfect. And let's wrap up this segment with these last 4 picks. We're gonna go more rapid fire here. Give me one sentence on each player, and I'll give you one sentence, and we'll wrap this up. So, 5th round pick Riley Nowakowski, the fullback out of Indiana.
Yeah. Connor Hayward replacement.
Yeah, I said this type of pick is gonna put pressure on other position groups for that 53-man roster. It's gonna make it a little bit more of a puzzle having a true fullback on the roster. Gabriel Rubio, my sentence was should have been an undrafted free agent, but the tape flashes in some of those one-on-one battles, especially the one he had with Vega Ione against Penn State. That was really good tape when you kind of pulled that out of the archives.
Yeah, again, you're just a guy you're hoping can make the roster at that point, so you're just swinging for upside. Whatever upside is in the 6th round, you're swinging for that.
Robert Spears Jennings, thoughts?
Special teams, speed, and size combo is what I think from that pick.
I think high upside, but high chance he doesn't make the roster. So we'll see what happens. And then wrapping it up with Eli Heidenreich.
Captain America, feel good story. I'm surprised he was there, really.
Yeah. I think someone probably after a red mullet that I will root for in training camp, but same as Spears Jennings, I think uphill battle to make the roster. I think it's going to be really him versus Caleb Johnson, to be honest, as a roster spot.
Yeah, and he could be someone too that's on the practice squad and then ends up fighting his way in and plays some games. So that's what you're kind of hoping for at that point in the draft.
Absolutely. So moving on from Steelers to Pirates, believe it or not, we're 25% of the way through the season, a quarter of
Yeah.
the point of the season on May 11th. Still, like we said, a lot of baseball to play. But Justin, what's your main thoughts here a quarter of the way through? How are we doing so far on what we were saying before the season versus where we are today?
Yeah, so disappointing week. We don't have to go super in depth in the week. I really thought this week all hinged on that game Sunday, and that was a disappointing loss. I think I saw today what fifth in runs, fifth in the league in starter ERA. Can't believe with those stats that they're what are they fourth or fifth in the division right now, or fourth, I guess, because of the Reds right now. So that doesn't seem to make any sense. Bullpen is probably feels a little worse, like you said last week than it was, but they'd have a disappointing week. They're down what 17th, I think, in ERA. So that's probably the area of improvement. And we'll go through some of our. I wanted to go through some of our predictions preseason and kind of where, because I mean, it looks great from our perspective and some of the things we were saying. But what are your thoughts at the quarter pool mark here?
Yeah, I mean they're on pace for 87 wins. I think they're above what most people would expect and right on par with what the optimistic fan was expecting going into this season.
Yeah,
Not quite to the level that I was calling out when I was a little bit altruistic before the season, but still
Yeah.
87 wins is great. I think the biggest surprise is just how good the rest of the division has been. So we'll see
Yes.
if that holds up the rest of the summer. But the pitching has been great. Skeens is just as good as he ever has been. Keller is having a good first half like he normally does. And my boy Braxton Ashcraft is another ace for the Pirates. He's sitting here right now with a 2.77 ERA, and that includes one start out of his 8 in which he allowed 6 runs in 4 innings. So you take that one start out, just kind of you did with Paul Skeens, and do some of that funny math, and it looks even better. But he's someone I said before the season, if he can stay healthy and put up more than 150 innings, you're going to be really excited about Ashcraft, and he is all that and more. So let's just knock on wood and he stays healthy, because he's going to blow past his career innings total this season.
Yeah. So, yeah, and I had it written down, like, I mean, we touched on it before, our bets on, maybe not so much on the tournament, but everything else we were kind of on fire. I mean, your prediction of 89 games, I think you really wanted to say 86-ish, but you went for the shock value either way, way over the over on that. I said
I said
80,
89.
like
Was
you
that
said.
the number I said? I couldn't
Yep,
remember.
yep,
Okay, if they're on an
yep.
87 win pace, that's right there.
Oh yeah, they don't blow the game yesterday. They're right on your pace. So I mean, you're way more right. Mr. Pirate's way more right than everyone else, even though they got caught out for it. So that's absolutely a win. Al over 30 home runs. He's on pace for 39. I mean, that looks great. Cruz over 21 home runs. We both love this one. He's on pace for 39. Ashcraft the breakout was absolutely your call. I mean, that couldn't be any. I mean, he has to be by far their breakout at this point. You even projected, hey, I think he has a better season than Chandler. No, I don't think many people would have said that before the season, and you're absolutely correct at this point. Mine was a little boring. Mine was very straightforward. Mangum to play a lot was basically my prediction. He's
And now
played
he's hurt.
75% of games. I know, and now he's hurt. Even then, even with him being hurt, he's played 75% of games. So don't give me that. That's a win. That's an absolute win right there. Skeens under 211 strikeouts. He's on pace for 184. So that's looking like a solid. I think again, that first start, I think I saw his ERA would be under 2, like 1.9 if it wasn't for that first start. That's trending upwards, but I mean, that's 27, I think, strikeouts below his over under, the pace. Even the ones where we were, a little bit, even our unders are looking good. The only one, we didn't have a prediction. I saw a guy laughed at this last night, our short of Ozuna being a good signing. Yeah, that might be our one miss, but you talk about a good average there. That's what, 6-1 really for our predictions at this point. So a lot of a season to happen. But I mean, we would have signed up for 6-1. Anyone would, at this point. We're way over on some of these, or way under on some of these.
Absolutely. And I think both of us would have preferred a Japanese, third baseman or corner infielder, and
Yep.
then Marcell Ozuna to invest
Yeah.
that cash in. When we were talking about Ozuna at the time, it was Ozuna versus McCutchen, and McCutchen is
Right.
not very
Right.
good this year either. So, but yeah,
It
Ozuna
was.
is pretty
I'll go one
rough
step
around the
further. It was
edges.
essentially Ozuna versus doing nothing else is really what we were discussing at the time. So I don't even know if I'd call that a prediction. I'm trying to be fair here by
Yeah.
saying this. I mean, at the end of the day, some of these may not hit. You can't tell me a quarter way through the season these 6 bets weren't the correct bets, at this point. So yeah, I think it's worth pointing out. It's not like we're just saying these. We shared every one we pretty much had, more or less. And I think these were all the right bets and they're all the right predictions. So.
Can I make a call out too on the Pirates prospects that I did before the season
Yeah,
too?
yeah.
So I was
Yep.
very high on the top end of that prospect list. So my top 3 were Connor Griffin, or top 4 were Connor Griffin, Bubba Chandler. So both MLB players right now. Bubba Chandler's not doing as well as he was at the end of last season, but still had a good start yesterday by his standards. But the next 2 after that are the ones that are just literally top 10 prospects in all of baseball right now. And that's Seth Hernandez, just got promoted to high A. So it'd be an age that he's in, and not only do as well as he is, but it's being moved forward as a pitcher, where you're usually
Right.
slower with those guys, is really impressive. If for whatever reason he actually sneaks into Double A at the end of this season, look out, because he could be in Pittsburgh by next summer. And the other person to get really excited about is Edward Florentino, who I actually had above Seth Hernandez, not because I didn't like Seth Hernandez, but because I love Florentino so much. He's hit 6 home runs in his first 16 games of the season so far at High A and Greensboro, and he absolutely, if all things the way they're supposed to play out, he should be your right fielder by next season as well. So when you think of kind of there, you
Mhm.
got some people coming down the pipe. He is a hitter that you got to be excited about and big time excited about. His power is real and it's coming fast. So those two guys are really replenishing a Connor Griffin moving to the majors, and the minor league system still looking just as good with a 5th overall pick still to come this summer.
Yeah, how about the Pirates just have the 3 best players in 3 drafts in a row? Who says
Yeah.
no to that? That would be pretty wild. So ERA under 1, I think I saw for Hernandez, and the stuff looks ridiculous at this point. So it'll be fun to follow him throughout the summer for sure. We're even getting quite some people were asking. I don't know if I think I said it to you. Some people were asking about, sending us videos about Seth Hernandez in general. So people are, outside. They're not even Pirate fans. So people are excited about him. That's so big for them to hit on a pick like that again. That could completely these 3 drafts could completely change the franchise moving forward. So it's fun to be playing well in the majors, but especially to look, you know, down the pipe and see, hey, this could actually be improving and moving forward.
Yeah. If you didn't realize it, Ben Charrington is here to stay, whether you like him or not. He's made
Yes.
enough good moves in the last 12 months to 16 months that those sour grapes of the last couple years, I think are just fine for at least now. So we'll see.
And I think at this point it's pretty clear. We're going to tell you when we were right and when we were wrong. We were so mad, and not just us, most Pirate fan, every Pirate fan I know. We were so mad when he was getting retained last year. And
Hmm.
I mean, now look, it's amazing how 12 months, how much can change in 12 months. Looks way different than he did 12 months ago, and we were definitely wrong about that one. I'll be the first one to say that. That's for sure.
Absolutely. So from Pirates, let's move on to Pens, keep things moving. We're going to do a little Pens free agency. Are they going to stay or go scenario? Same thing we kind of did with the Steelers before. So we'll run right down the list for the unrestricted free agents, throw in a couple of the restricted free agents that'll most likely be back, given the way the NHL works and those players. But Justin, off the top, Malkin, is he going to be a
He's
Penguin or is he not? And do you want him to be?
he will stay, and I don't want you to ever say Malkin to the Caps again on this podcast. That might be the end of this podcast if that comes up again. He stays. He'll be a Penguin next year, I think.
I think he stays as well, but I think he's more on the fence than we think so.
Yeah.
Stuart Skinner, though, in goal.
Yeah, he's gone. It's not even necessarily about him. It's just a matter of Miroshov coming up, and then Shilovs is restricted. It's just basic math and just spots with him.
Yeah, I agree with that. And you still have Bloomquist that can be your AHL goalie
Mhm.
for your third goalie depth throughout the season. So I think Skinner is moving on. Ryan Shea.
I think they would like to retain him, but again, this is a little bit of a numbers game. If you look at the third and fourth pairs, Gerard, Letang, Graves, I don't know what they're going to do with some of those. It just might be a numbers game where we agree. I think that they'll certainly move at least one of those 3 that I just mentioned. I think they would like to keep him, but it just becomes does it make sense for him? Does he go elsewhere for opportunity type deal? That's the one I probably am most on the fence about. I would guess I'm closest to 50-50 on him. I'm going to say he goes.
See, I'm the other way. I think he stays. I think he was more of a kind of a glue guy to the back end of that team, and I think he was one of the better defensemen. And if you're going to get better on the
Yeah,
blue
yeah, I
line,
don't
you don't let one of your better
right.
defensemen walk out of the building. You keep him around for another couple years. I don't think it'll be a long term to keep him around either at his stage of his career.
I would like to see him stay. It's just a matter of it'll depend on what they do. We're trying to predict what they actually do with bigger signings as well. But yeah, that one could go either way.
Yeah, I mean, if they upgrade him, even better. But if they are not able to upgrade the defense, then Shea coming back would not be the worst thing. I think the biggest
Mhm.
breakout this year on the 1 year deal off the ACL, Anthony Mantha scored way more than you would have ever expected
Yeah.
from that slot. Did the Penguins strike gold again and lock him into an actual deal where he has to perform, or do you let him see greener pastures somewhere else? Where's Anthony
So
Mantha going?
this could be a pivot off of what happens with Malkin a little bit because I think this might be the spot where they keep Malkin and they sign, winger in that second, third, in the second to third, line range. I would guess he walks because I think he's going to get paid. You don't see players at his age have career years very often, but I wouldn't blame him whatsoever to kind of cash in. So I would guess walk, but again, this might be the Malkin. One of them would be, I guess, I would guess one of them stays, one of them walks.
Yeah, I think I'm also with you on that. I think he walks. I think the Pens were probably pretty on the fence with bringing him back as the regular season was wrapping up. And then I think they hopped off that fence and said, "See you later," when they
Yeah,
watched him play in that Philly
right,
series, because if you're gonna have to pay him now after that season. And if you're
right.
gonna pay him, then he needs to perform in those big games, and he was definitely toothless in the playoffs. So
So close to winning game 6 too, he got in tight and this his whole, Penguins tenure looks different if he scores there, but he was the player too, like some of the players you could see it coming, not translating to the playoffs. We talked about Chinikov, Kindle being as young as he is, not shocking with those guys and type of game that was getting played. His style should have played perfectly in that series and it just didn't really show up. So that was disappointing, but yeah, I agree. I don't think the playoffs helped, but yeah, I could have seen them being on the fence. I wouldn't be shocked if they brought him back. Like I said, he might be number 2 for me behind Shea in terms of who I'm not, but I just think he'll get enough where it would make sense. Not that the Penguins couldn't resign him if they wanted to, but I think it just may make more sense to invest more in whether it's a defenseman or a different player.
I actually think he'll be a player that'll go off free agency early in the free agency as well. I think someone's gonna pounce on him with who the names that are out there. So if the Pens aren't ready to make that move, or they're trying to make a bigger swing than Mantha,
Right,
they
that could
might
happen.
not be able to wait around to circle back to him. The fourth line guy, though, that I was not even really going to include on this list, but one way or the other, is Acciari coming back.
Achari, yeah, yeah.
Chari, yeah, there you
Joe
go.
hates fourth liners. It's fine. Joe hates fourth liners and hates the offensive lineman. He doesn't like the guys doing the dirty work. This one I could see. So this is a numbers game too with Dewar, being extended. Lazat was awesome. He was important for them. They missed him down the stretch, and he looked good at the end of that the Flyers series. It depends. This is really one of those. Do they want to? The number's going to matter. Fourth line type minutes. Their fourth line was great when they were all playing together. So this may be a question of do they want to keep the fourth line together? Sometimes that's a spot where you want to free that up for like a Soderblom to be playing or not that he'll necessarily play fourth line, but you want to get some guys like that. And they for the first time had the forward depth like we had talked about, like a McGrody and a Hayes and guys like that. So this is a numbers game. I would guess he walks, but I wouldn't be shocked if they brought him back. I just don't think they're going to like the number.
Yeah, and I think both restricted free agents are coming back as well. Chinikov and Silovs are both going to be back, especially if Skinner walks, which we both predicted. You
Yeah,
on board with
I
that?
agree. Nope. Yeah, I think that's pretty sure. I can't see a scenario where Chinikov, he's not going to get offer sheeted, I wouldn't think, by someone. That's so rare. It's not like he was like, again, similar to Mantha. It's not like he went to the playoffs and just lit the world on fire. So his numbers will probably get him a nice, especially with the Penguins, will get him a nice number, but it's not going to be a number the Penguins are afraid of, especially with their cap situation. That's a no-brainer. He'll be a Penguin. Shilovs will be, like we just talked about, he'll be a Penguin. I think those are easy.
Yep, absolutely. So we'll see how the free agency plays out. I think maybe next couple episodes we can talk about if there's any targets that are bigger
Mhm.
across the NHL. It's probably a little bit of a blind spot for me for hockey, but I'll try to
Yeah.
do some pre-research there to talk through it with everybody.
This will be a fun off season. I mean, they have money for when was the last time you heard the Penguins anywhere near the top of the league in, cap space? So it'll be different. So it should be a fun off season to say the least.
For sure. And then moving on to our last topic of the day, the 2014 playoff and college football, and kind of the potential to move to that. It was a very big hot topic here in Columbus, Ohio. They were not talking about it from a Pittsburgh standpoint. They were talking about it truly from an Ohio State standpoint, saying, "Hey, this doesn't really matter to us either way. We're going to be in the playoffs. This just means we got to watch all these bad games before we can watch our team play." Was kind of the takes
Yeah.
on the radio here. But what would the take of a Pitt fan be? I feel like it's got to be a positive perspective to be able to have the
So
better
I
chance of getting
look
the
at
dance.
I mean, yeah, if we're looking at it from Pitt perspective, I don't really. You have to look at these things from two different perspectives. As a fan, we've talked about this. Where I am not a huge proponent. This is why this exact step is why I did not want to expand the playoffs past 6 or 8 teams in the first place. Like, why don't we just go to 48, Joe? Why don't we just go to 48 teams in the playoff at this point? We'll just keep expanding like the NCAA tournament to where they're going to have 100 teams in soon.
I'd watch it.
Yeah, for
Why
Pitt,
not?
it's from yeah, Joe, we'll watch 162 baseball games, but we don't want to have 162 baseball games either. It's not the best thing for the sport. I can't. It's just like the one thing for me, and this is we've always differed on this. The one thing for me that I love the most about college football, even though it is not good for Pitt, this would be good for Pitt, obviously, is the fact that the regular season matters as much as it does. I'll remember regular season games that, big regular season games before I'm going to remember the Texas A&M Miami first round game. And I understand that's probably a hot take. It's probably not like I guess the common take on this. It's just there's a line. They're going to cross it. They already crossed it for me, but I think and probably not for the average fan. But the thing that makes college basketball so great is the opposite of what makes college football so great and what makes them stand out. And we're going to cross the line where the regular season is going to start becoming like, okay, yeah, like it's exciting, it's fun, but it doesn't have the same impact. And I think this is just too much for me. It's not even close for me. I don't know how people weren't saying this already.
This always makes me smile because everybody, I feel like the people who are the loudest about, oh, this is terrible, it's going to ruin the regular season, it's going to make it so we're watching these bad playoff games because there's teams that shouldn't be in it, will
But
be
that's not
watching those games. Like I'm thinking about what you were just saying, but also what your brother has said in our text messages and things of that nature. It's definitely one of those where I feel like people are kind of talking both sides where they talk down on kind of the product, but I know for a fact they'll be watching the product when it
So I
comes to
didn't
the
really
2014
watch
playoff too.
many of the first round games, to be honest with you. That wasn't really the point I was making. I wasn't saying because bad teams are going to be in it. I mean,
No, yeah, I get
they
it.
could do it. They could do it better.
You're on
Not
the
have
regular
Tulane
season
playing.
side. It
Yeah, yeah.
ruins
They could
the
be doing it.
the late September, early October game or things of that nature.
It's not even that it doesn't ruin them. It just becomes a little bit too much like the NFL, where it's like, okay, like this game matters, but like it's not like do or die for these teams. And again, it's not like that's gone. I'm not saying that's gone, but there is a line where they could cross that where it does really start to diminish it. Yeah. And the other, I'm not making the argument of Tulane playing Ole Miss doesn't need to happen twice. Like you can make that argument's easy to make. I'm not even making that one.
Yeah.
I don't really have that much of an issue with those teams necessarily getting in. I think you just want to have a path for some of these teams. You can't just make it where it's the Big Ten SEC Invitational type deal. You just need to have a path. And I'm not saying that needs to be equal. You just need to give some teams hope is really what you need to do, especially some of those, smaller schools for sure.
I think
It's better
16
for
would probably
Pitt.
be the perfect number for me.
Yeah,
What would be the
that's
perfect
fine.
number of playoff? I think
The perfect
16 for
number for
me
me,
because you would have a fully like you'd 8 versus 8, there's no buys and just play it all out for over 4 weeks of the season or the playoffs.
I think we're already beyond. No, you could make the argument. I used to be a very, very big proponent of you can talk me into 4, 6, 8. I really liked 8. It's different now with NIL. They're like the top of college football. It's a bigger group. I do think, I mean, again, do you think there's more than 16 teams that can win a college football playoff? That's not the argument we're having, but I don't even know what you're going to answer this, but do you think that's possible?
I don't think it's possible right now because I don't think it has been possible for more than 16 teams to get in a position to win that game. I think to your point, I think NIL changes that, but there's just so much changing with college football because even with NIL
Yeah.
changing, there's like
Yeah.
Ohio State spending way more than anyone else, Texas spending way more than anyone else, and even though Pitt can spend, they're not going to spend to those same levels. So
No.
it's
No.
definitely going to be an aspect where you're still only going to have so many teams that can win. But I think you can say that in literally any sport that we watch. Like how many teams in the NFL can realistically win a Super Bowl this year? Probably only 8 or so when you kind of start breaking it down of who should be in there. And so I think even and that was probably the one where you can kind of argue a little bit down, but if you talk about NBA or NHL, those type of leagues, I feel like you're getting hard pressed when you get to the double digit amount of teams that can actually make it to win a championship.
Well, those sports too are just more like coin flip the sport in general, I think. Like a better football team, and this isn't even a college thing, but just like a better football team usually wins that head-to-head matchup because they're just the better team wins more often in a one game type. That's why you have to have a series in other sports. But yeah, I just think we're gonna it'll be interesting. To your point, we don't know what it's going to be. Like if you would have told me like 10 years ago they're gonna have a 2014 playoff, I'm like, what the heck is the point of that? There's no way. NIL has changed that for sure. There are more competitive teams in that next tier of the beyond the 4 or 8 or whatever it is. 10 years ago, I mean, no one was beating Alabama. That's not just that's a different. It's almost a different world compared to where we're at now.
Yeah, absolutely. I do think, though, to wrap it, this is a positive thing for Pitt. More
Yeah,
playoff
I agree
teams
with
is
that.
a positive thing. More teams in March Madness is a positive thing for Jeff Capel as well, if you want to go the other side of that.
Yeah,
So
well, that's a
all
whole
of this
different story.
is a positive for kind of a not a top tier, but next level down, or maybe even next level after that Pitt football program. So it's definitely a positive for the school, and then we'll kind of see how it plays out. But I'm for more football. So when we always have less football or more football, give me more football. So 2014 playoff, here we come. But I think we kind of went pretty long on the Steelers up top, and this was mighty nostalgic talking through some old regular season wins and losses that you were talking about for Pitt too. So I think this might be a good place to wrap for this week. If you guys are still listening, we really appreciate you here. Like and subscribe. If you're still listening right now and you're not subscribed, you're really missing out. So I think it's really just Justin's mother-in-law who might be still hanging on at this time. But if you are not subscribed, otherwise we'll see you next Wednesday.
All right, see you later.